The bathroom!
Oh, hello, beautiful watchers. What are you doing in there with Wendy? Oh well, doesn't matter, I suppose. Welcome back to Lost in Adaptation. This is The Shining. The works of Stephen King have always seemed to me to exist in that Goldilocks zone of writing necessary to constantly become best-selling sensations, being just creepy enough that it draws you in, but not enough that it scares people off, being creative enough to intrigue people, but not so much that it easily confuses, and being well written enough to involve some truly inspired descriptions and metaphors, but not so stylized that it ever alienates any particular demographic.
Despite this highly successful format for writing his books, he hasn't had much luck with film adaptations of his work. Concepts that literally seemed good on paper often revealed themselves to be somewhat goofy and lacking in depth when portrayed on the big screen. One of the most notable exceptions to this was The Shining. Directed by Stanley Kubrick, it received a lukewarm reception on initial release, but has since then become one of those movies that's so iconic you can probably piece together a complete version of it from all the different parodies that have sprung up over the years. Despite this, Stephen King reportedly did not care for the film at all, so much so that he told them he was going to make his own Shining movie, and it was going to have blackjack and hookers. The end result, as you've probably already seen in the Nostalgia Critics review of it, was the Shining miniseries, a 3-part TV movie that was way more accurate to the original story, but unfortunately way less entertaining in every conceivable way. I'm not actually planning to bring up the miniseries again for the rest of this review. Suffice to say, if you've seen it, you probably won't be surprised by much of what I'm about to describe to you.
Okay, let's be about it, shall we? You know, regardless of how Mr. King feels, there's actually a good deal of the book in the film.
A former teacher named Jack gets a job as a winter caretaker of a remote mountain hotel, a position that will leave him, his wife and kids stranded and snowed in miles from help for months on end. His 5-year-old son Danny isn't so keen on the idea because he appears to possess a strange psychic ability that lets him read people's thoughts and see the future, and his power has shown him that the hotel is not a very nice place indeed. This is confirmed by the hotel's friendly cook, who also possesses this ability to a lesser extent, and he warns Danny to avoid certain areas of the building for being more haunted than others. Things go okay at first, but Jack soon starts acting very strangely and the whole family starts seeing things that couldn't possibly be there. It's eventually revealed that the hotel itself has a will of its own and has been altering people's minds for decades, driving them to horrible acts of murder-suicide so it can absorb their souls into itself. Jack eventually gives into the madness and tries to off his family, but fortunately fails miserably in the attempt. Danny and his mother cheese it out of the hotel and Jack dies horribly. The end. Let's see, what else? In both versions, Jack is a recovering alcoholic trying to turn his life around and finish writing a play that he's been working on since forever. Wendy's attempts to make the best of an abusive marriage and a superhuman child are a big part of her character in both the film and the book. Both Dannys are young boys who, due to their unique gifts, are burdened with a greater understanding of what was going on at the hotel and have to take on responsibilities far beyond their years. In both incarnations, Halloran is a good-natured, confident African-American who is selfless enough to fly halfway across the country and put his life on the line to help out a boy he only met for a few hours. The previous caretaker of the hotel getting a posthumous change of profession to drinks waiter was an original plot point, and so was the ghost party that Jack Gate crashes, although it was referenced a lot more in the novel. So yeah, there's more than enough loyalty to the book that I have no issues with it sharing its title. I wish I could go as far as to say that I think King overreacted, but...
You know, it seems like all the most iconic stuff was a cubic addition. The blood elevator, the ghost twins, the hedge maze, Danny's big wheel, Jack's repetitive declarations of the danger of a poor work-to-play ratio, the photo at the end. None of it was in the book. That's not to say the book didn't have creepy stuff, it was just... different creepy stuff.
Stuart Ullman is a friendly, welcoming man in the film. He was a massive, massive asshole in the book. Just the worst. Imagine every full of himself, micromanaging, rude, right-to-your-face boss that you've ever had all rolled up into one. That's Ullman. In the book, Watson the summertime caretaker was a grumpy, foul-mouthed, casual racist homophobe with a heart of gold. He barely features in the film, and what little you see of him seems to be well-dressed and polite. Tony, what happened to you, Tony? So you're all probably familiar with the croaky-voiced, wiggly-finger version of him, however it may surprise you to hear that Kubrick pulled that right out of his ass. Tony manifested himself as a boy a few years older than Danny who came to him in his dreams, always appearing off in the distance so he couldn't be seen clearly. It's hinted for a while that he is a ghost because around the middle of the the story, he's driven off from the hotel by the other spirits. In his last appearance in the book, he finally approaches Danny and is revealed to be Danny, or at least Danny as he will look in a few years when he's older, and explains that he's a part of Danny's own subconscious mind. He does the same sort of stuff as he does in the film, trying to warn the boy off going to the Overlook by showing him visions of the future, but that's the only real similarity. And then you have Dick Halloran. As you can see, he comes to a somewhat sticky and painful end here in the film, but in the book he takes a good beating from Jack, but survives and recovers enough to pick up Danny and Wendy and drives them away from the hotel in his snowmobile. I can just picture that particular studio meeting now.
Steve-O, good to finally meet you. Big fan of your work. Hi, it's nice to meet you too. Well, we're all really looking forward to working on the film with you. I do have to talk to you first though about the little mistake you made in the book. Mistake? Yeah, in chapter 53 you accidentally wrote that the black guy doesn't die. Who, Halloran? Yeah, he fights his way to the hotel, rescues the wife and kid, and becomes a surrogate father to Danny from then on. Yeah, but Steve, you wrote that the black guy doesn't die. So? You know what, don't worry about it, we'll fix it for you.
The hotel having been built on a Native American burial ground, the blink and you'll miss it explanation the film gives as to why shit gets supernatural in the Overlook is not in the book. The building's just nasty because it's nasty. They do mention a few other interesting goings-on in the hotel's history though. In the film, Jack gave up booze after he injured his son, but in the book he went right on drinking for years after that. What eventually inspired him to get on the wagon was him and his drinking buddy running over a kid's abandoned bicycle one night, and the disturbing implications of what might have happened if the owner had been on it at the time. The Lloyd the Spirit bartender scene. This is a bit of a confusing one. In the book, the first time Lloyd appears to give Jack a drink, it's made very clear that Jack is just imagining the whole thing to cheer himself up. Lloyd then becomes more real later on as the hotel gains power, and the whole thing serves to significantly blur the lines of reality for Jack. In the film, he's either a straight-up ghost right from the start, or Jack is batshit crazy right from the start. The lovely little crumpet that Jack makes out with in the bathroom isn't in the book. The shit-in-pants-inducing zombie version who chokes the shit out of Danny is, but she doesn't have a visually appealing form to slip into.
Great story, Steve, just great, but I can't help but feel it lacks a certain sexy edge, you know, like a beautiful woman showering naked or something. Well, there's the scene where there's the naked old lady decomposing in the bathtub, but there's no way you could make that sexy, right? Right?
To any of my beautiful watchers whose hands are even now poised over your keyboards to defend the character of Stanley Kubrick and his associates, fear not. I am only kidding. I'm actually quite impressed that he realised the only thing worse than seeing this monstrosity would be being tricked into snogging it! In the book, Jack doesn't actually see anything at all. He loses his nerve and legs it out of the room before the ghost can get out of the tub. They also explained who the fuck she was in the book, being the ghost of a middle-aged lady who committed suicide after being jilted by her young lover. In the film, Jack sabotages the radio to stop Wendy from being able to call for help, but in the book he hasn't quite reached that level of crazy yet. He accidentally destroys the radio in a fit of panic as his abusive father's voice starts coming out of it and having a go at him. Jack's murder weapon of choice differs from book to film. He originally armed himself with a roque mallet. It's kind of like croquet, but you don't play it on grass. It doesn't matter. I have to wonder why, as it was mentioned that there was a fire axe available. Maybe he just didn't have enough skill points in axe wielding. Kubrick once stated that the photo at the end was supposed to hint that Jack was either a reincarnation of one of the hotel's previous managers or an escaped ghost made flesh being brought back home. I'm afraid that's another Kubrick original. The fan theory that Jack's ghost has now become part of the hotel is actually much closer to the way things were in the novel. Unlike in the film where Jack really commits to murdering his wife and kid, in the book it's made very clear that Jack doesn't actually want to do any of it and is being controlled by the evil supernatural hive mind of the hotel. When Jack's mind starts fighting through and tries to stop himself from killing Danny, the Overlook forces him to bash his own face in, killing him so he can take full control of his corpse. I can see why Stephen King hated the film's interpretation of Jack in particular, a subject that leads us nicely into...
2 words, beautiful watchers, character development. The book has it, the film does not. King poured paragraph after paragraph into building up the backstories of all his cast. You learn about the whole damn lives of Jack, Wendy, Danny, and even Halloran. Then on top of that, they all get their own story arcs with major changes and payoffs at the end. Before he goes completely crazy, Jack comes to terms with his past and his drinking problem, Wendy finds the hidden strength within her, Danny has the coming-of-age story, and Halloran makes peace with his mortality. Also, Book Jack started off as a loving, devoted father and good-intentioned husband, making his slow fall to the dark side all the more unexpected and upsetting. Jack Nicholson's Jack is a dick to his wife and a creep to his son pretty much from day one. I'm honestly not even convinced that the hotel had a hand in him going batshit crazy, as he seems completely capable of doing it all by himself.
They mentioned that Jack was a teacher in the film, but but they left out the reason why he wasn't anymore, namely that he had beaten the shit out of one of his students when he caught him in the act of slashing his car tyres. Jack's recurring guilt over this plays a large part in the novel. The film skips pretty quickly into winter, but the book covers a large amount of autumn and Wendy and Danny's constant agonization over the decision of whether they should leave the hotel now before the snow comes and traps them there. Just enough weird shit had happened that they really wanted out, but the job was Jack's last chance of getting his life back on track, so they had a very good reason to stay. As I hinted at before, the book includes a few interesting things about the Overlook's past that didn't feature in the film, the most noteworthy of which is probably that it briefly fell into the hands of the mob and became a hangout for Las Vegas bigwigs. This culminated in a rather violent hit taking place in the presidential suite. One of the recurring themes in the book was the, hedge animals. 2 lions, a dog and a rabbit coming to life every now and again and trying to attack and kill people. At first they could only move in a way that was reminiscent of the weeping angels from Doctor Who, i.e. when you were stupid enough to look away from them, when you looked back they'd be significantly closer. But later on they start moving freely and chasing people around the gardens and even leaving the hotel grounds to intercept people on the way there. Sometimes it's really hard to figure out why certain things didn't make it into the film. This is not one of those times. Hedges are not and never will be particularly scary, Mr. King, I'm sorry. Wasps also keep popping up in the book, either in flashbacks to significant events in multiple people's lives, as metaphors for Jack's life as a whole and the hive mind of the hotel, and also as literal fucking wasps. While renovating the hotel roof, Jack comes across a large nest and receives a nasty sting, which incidentally sends him into 40 minutes of silent introspection. Yes, it's that kind of novel. He uses poison gas to kill all the wasps, then gives the empty nest to his son as a gift. Danny likes it and puts it next to his bed, only for the nest to magically refill with wasps that same night and attack everyone. Because this is any film other than Dune, we miss out on hearing Jack's internal monologue, and to be completely honest, I don't miss it. The man changes his mind so often on whether he blames his alcoholism on himself, on the booze, on his dad, on his wife, or on the universe in general, it gets a little tiresome after a while. Once again, I must humbly request that you restrain your commenting hands, beautiful watchers. I'm aware that King was working through his own issues vicariously through his character, but, you know, that doesn't actually make it any less annoying. In the film, Wendy and Jack never really fully acknowledged Danny's powers, but in the book there was a scene in the kitchen that takes place shortly after the bathtub lady incident where they finally get it all out in the open.
Now Danny, you're not in any trouble, I just want you to be completely honest with us. Do you have magic powers?
Yes, Daddy.
Oh! Okay.
I don't think they explained very well in the film that the reason the Overlook was becoming so progressively active was because it was feeding off Danny's shining power. Most of the time, with only Halloran and some other people with weak abilities to power it, it could only show people disturbing flashes of horrible things that had happened in the past. But with Wonder Boy there to juice it up, the ghost could actually start touching people and creating things like booze out of thin air. Everything it does to Jack is part of a larger plan to kill Danny and absorb his power into itself. With Danny's soul as a permanent feature of the Overlook, it could spread its influence even to people without any shining power, or even extend its evil out of its own boundaries.
It might even take over the world. I said, take over the world. Ah, I guess you have to earn it.
Halloran wishes he was chilling in bed when he got Danny's message. In the book, he was driving a Cadillac down the freeway at high speed and the force of Danny's shining scrambles his brain so badly he comes within inches of flying off the road. The bonk on the head Jack receives in the film is small potatoes compared to Wendy burying a butcher's knife up to the hilt in his back like she did in the novel. To use Stephen King's own words, the film ended in ice, the book ended in fire. Right from the start, the book foreshadows a disaster involving the hotel's ancient and obsolete boiler, which has a serious overpressurization issue and has to be attended to at least twice a day, every day, or it will explode and take the whole hotel with it. And that's exactly what happens at the end. While what used to be Jack chases Danny around, it completely forgets to let off the pressure. Danny mentions it to it at the last moment as a way of distracting it from smashing his little head in. Everyone scarpers while Overlook Jack runs down to the basement to try to stop it from all going kablamo. It just doesn't make it in time.
The Dom's final thoughts. Don't get me wrong, I liked the film. Considering I'm not into horror movies all that much, that's really saying something, but I kinda see King's point, I really do. I was tempted at first to throw words like miscasting into play, but Nicholson was perfect for the kind of Jack the film was portraying. This definitely wasn't a failure as an adaptation due to poor directing, poor acting, or poor scripting. This shit was intentional. Stanley Kubrick also made me realise I was participating in a frightful double standard. In other films I was disgusted when faced with a myriad of seemingly unnecessary changes, but I found myself trying to think of excuses for them when they showed up in The Shining, and I was never tempted to yell my his story, your story insult at it. I think I'm self-honest enough to admit that what I'm willing to forgive inevitably hinges on how much I enjoyed the film, so I'll end this episode on a piece of advice for potential book adapters. If you're going to go off and do your own thing, make sure it's for a very, very good movie. Hey beautiful watchers, just wanted to remind you there's a few perks you can get from becoming a Patreon supporter, things like early access to videos, oh shit. You get a chance to be one of those people I contact before every episode to discuss the book and the film, did you like it, did you read it, stuff like that. You also get priority request status for future episodes, so hey! There is of course no pressure, and thank you very much to everyone who's contributed so far. Okay, I'll see you next time, bye!